Just not getting it.
Worst job not anymore. I've been working since I was 12. I've done every crap job you can do, but the all-time worst is I got hired as a temp for a week because a pet flea spray had mislabeled 18,000 bottles. So we had to take rubbing alcohol, wipe off the wrong serial number, and then put on a sticker with a new serial number, the correct one on it, so they could ship them out. And it took a week of just mindless, just being a complete moron. I'm like, okay, never, ever again. That was the worst. I was like,
that's horrible.
Oh my God. There's nothing worth this.
Matter of fact, I'll say this. Unless you are in a fairly specialized industry or you're just highly freaking skilled at office work, highly skilled, like, I don't know, like the anonymous female, she's highly skilled out there in podcast land. Just no. Anything you get out of a temp agency is usually pretty horrible.
They can be brutal.
Oh, wow.
And I've got some pretty bad tip assignments in my day too, so I definitely understand. What about your best job?
I would say Liquid Nine just because it's my company, but honestly, I think the job that made Liquid Nine possible was when I started working at Sprint. Because I hadn't graduated college, I had no business doing anything. I was a telemarketer, just bugging people during dinner to try to sell them long distance. And just one day had a weird kind of revelation of, I wrote this like 30-page paper over the week on how they could make their call centers infinitely more financially viable. And my boss wanted to fire me, and my boss's boss said, I'll move you to Orlando for 6 months. You get the crappiest call center we have, and if you can do anything with it, then you can keep your job. If you don't, you're fired. And I'm like, deal. So it was great. So taught me that I could actually do something right.
You say it was in Orlando?
I lived in Orlando for a couple of years.
All right.
It was great.
All right.
I had a really good time.
He kept his job.
Well, and then I ended up getting, most of the call centers in North America at some point, and it was pretty fun.
Wow.
That was how they started. And
So-
Sprint couldn't figure out how to lay me off, so they just kept paying me.
So were you like as they rolled out new call centers, or like were you?
If you've seen Up in the Air, that was what I did.
Oh.
I went around and targeted people.
It's all
and
about
then
Up in the Air is the true story of Chris.
Yeah. So if you
Restructured
haven't,
it.
if you haven't seen Up in the Air out there in podcast land, rent it. It's a George Clooney movie.
Pretty good.
Basically, it's a really good movie,
Yeah.
but it's basically about firing people, and not just firing people. It was really it actually had more depth than that, but that's what Clooney did for a living.
Right.
Chris, how'd you make the jump from making call centers more profitable, more efficient to video production?
When I was at Sprint, I wanted to take over one of the call centers in California.
Cool.
But I didn't know anybody in California. So I had been a film major for a while when I was in school.
Yeah.
And I always liked it and stuff. But I thought, the only people I'm ever going to know that will move to California would be people on acting. So I thought I'll just take an acting class and just to try to meet some people on that kind of stuff. And then we couldn't agree on a salary for the job, so I ended up staying in Kansas City. But I had met, during that time that I was taking the acting classes and stuff, I had met a video editor and an audio engineer who worked for our competitors now.
Right.
So we three started the company together, and then went great for a while, and then they got married, and then they got unmarried, and then I bought the company out from them and brought in 2 new partners, and then kind of switched directions a little bit, same kind of thing. Added production, and then it became kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very fun. It was very lucky. I mean, literally, Sprint paid me for 2 years to not work there. Like, they could not figure out how to lay me off. So it was just the most bizarre thing.
You can't figure out how to fire the guy who goes in to fire people.
I mean, it was so weird. Then they kept giving me bonus after bonus because technically I had been an employee during those years, even though I wasn't working there. And then I got like a railroad pension fund of some sort. I didn't know about. I mean, I swear to God, I got more money to not work for that company than I ever did to work there.
Amazing.
And I invested it all, so because I was nervous they were going to come looking for it. So. Yeah, I did
amazing.
All right.
Well done,
That's
sir.
how we started it. So yeah, it was fun. Thanks.
Well done. Well played, as they say.
Well played. What's the saying? when opportunity knocks, the problem is he's usually wearing overalls.
I like that. That's about right.
Yeah, I always like the phrase when there's blood in the streets buy real estate. Like it's just sometimes you just gotta take advantage of the hardship.
I called
That's
him.
right.
I let him know it was fair.
So Lane, let's start with worst job.
Worst job. You know, a lot of the if any of my soldiers hear this, their jaws are gonna drop. I think the worst job I ever had was when I was a company commander, and it wasn't because of my guys. It was because of the people I answered to. Make a long story short, it was a scenario where you have to understand, when I became a company commander, at that point I'd been in the Army 5 years, 3 of which I had been in Iraq. Salty is a good word to describe that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And all of the senior leadership of the unit above me had, except for my battalion commander, had never really heard a shot fired in anger.
Oh wow.
And had a lot of political aspirations and some family legacy hang-ups that they're trying to crawl from outside of daddy's shadow. So to make a long story short, at that time, without getting in a long drawn-out discussion, I don't want to get all Big Dave on y'all, but
we have now coined a verb, big daving.
Yes. So anyway, during that time in our military history, it seemed like the moment you'd come back from a deployment, the unit would completely change. The veterans would go off to some sort of cush job to let them relax for a year. Newbies would come in, and it's like you're constantly having to relearn the basics every goddamn year.
Gotcha.
So, I was assigned to a heavy division, meaning tanks, right? Not light infantry.
Right.
Except I knew our deployment was going to be to Afghanistan. There ain't no tanks in Afghanistan, right? And you ever heard of the Abrams tank?
Yeah.
Well, our division commander was his son, also named Abrams.
Oh.
So rather than preparing a bunch of tankers, for a counterinsurgency in the mountains of Afghanistan, he decided to take his Tonka trucks and let's play tanks. Right? You're already looking at me kind of. I was furious.
Yeah,
But, see, the thing is, I didn't really have a dog in the fight other than prior to coming to this heavy unit, I was always in light infantry units, fighting the insurgency, and so I knew the kind of transformation these fellas had to make, not just tactically, but physically. Physically. And you don't get physically fit for a mountain fight in 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I kept raising this up and up and up. The problem is my battalion commander, who even though he's a war hero from 2003, was a political bootlick, and so he was going along to get along because he wanted to get promoted.
Right.
And the division commander, all he could think about is, Abrams tanks. And so you know what, General Abrams? I lay all the dead soldiers from that deployment at your feet, because the ones that didn't know what they were doing and died because of it is your fault, sir.
Wow. Well, physically, how different is it?
Okay, so in Iraq in a tank fight, you're in an air-conditioned 70-ton vehicle with a 120-millimeter cannon sitting the entire time.
Okay.
Right?
But you're still the Army was just going to take your stake.
It's mentally taxing.
Got it.
Right? But all of your logistics are done by...
You're comfortable while you're doing it, so to speak.
An internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
Whereas in Afghanistan, it's here's your 70-pound rucksack, and by the way, there's a 10,000 peak you need to go climb.
On top of whatever ammo and gun and whatever else you have.
Yeah,
Right,
if you don't mind going in and checking all the caves on the way.
That'd
be great.
Jesus. So it was the worst job I ever had because of the fight I had with my superiors, which, keeping true to professional form, my guys below me had no idea was going on.
Oh.
All right, so it was very, very hard. At the end of the day, once I was done fighting the good fight of trying to, at the very least, raise raise some grievances. I don't know grievances, but questions.
Legitimate concerns.
You have legitimate concerns.
You're looking out for your men.
Right, up higher. But at the end of the day, when it comes down, Lane, you're going to do it this way, young captain. And so it's like to have to turn around and go to my soldiers, the hardest of which to tell were my senior NCOs, sergeants who knew the game, right?
Right.
And explain to them, hey, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And them raising the exact same concerns I just raised up higher to me.
Right.
And now I'm having to take ownership of my seniors' retardation down below. And it's like, oh my God. It was that one assignment is why I left the Army.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, what's that old phrase? The attitude reflects leadership. Like if you've got bad commanders at the top, you can't have effective.
It got to the point where I had to bend my ethics to make sure what was right was done. So higher thought we were playing with tanks when in reality they're getting ready for an insurgency. So all my reports had to do with tanking.
Right.
When in reality, no, we were doing foot marches and.
Yeah. Because you can't.
And I don't like having to lie.
Yeah, you can't take a tank up the side of a mountain.
Right.
That's.
I would imagine you have to lose a little more than mine, though.
Yes.
I would.
Yeah.
It's between losing and lying. I'm gonna lie.
I prefer to win.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's not just about winning; it's lives that are at stake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so soldiers died in that particular deployment, in my opinion, because of a 52-year-old overweight general's ego.
Man, no, can't say it any more clear than that.
And I really hope he hears this and comes after me. Because I'm right here, Huckleberry.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have to jump in here with this. The views and opinions in the panel and guests do not reflect the opinions
Yeah. I'm signing up on my stuff getting hacked just because you. Alien red.
Oh, that's funny though.
You need to pre-record that.
You know what? Actually, I actually am going to pre-record this with the laughter at the end. Actually, because I'm just like. Because I actually wrote it out because I thought it was funny.
Or our sponsors.
See, there you go. See, and this is why the anonymous female is the right hand of the podcast. Because I hadn't even thought about that part. Anyway, so that was the worst job.
Yes.
All right. Now, your best.
I'm living it.
Okay.
My God, it is so damn gratifying. Because, all right, let me put it this way. There's a lot of arguments about how to invest and how to prepare for retirement. It all boils down to this. The upside meaning stuff going up, will always take care of itself. Where you provide your value to your clients as a wealth manager is in a down market, when everybody's losing their ass. And so the thing is, kind of sliding into one, but being able to, so really, there's only a few levers you can control. You can control your tax liabilities. You can't control the percentages you owe, but you can play the rules to the best of your ability, to beat Uncle Sam, right? You can pull the lever of risk management, right, to protect your downside while doing your best to unencumber the upside. And you can control fees, right, in terms of what you pay. And so I'm very proud of the work I do for, and this isn't meant to be a promotional bid. Yeah. But I didn't realize that the past 6 months I went on a campaign to educate my clients who from previous advisors I inherited them from had not done a good job. That look, when the market drops 10% like it has so far, when the economy is still structurally sound, right? Mm-hmm. That is what we call opportunity. Yes. The Chinese word for chaos literally means opportunity in crisis. So it was really gratifying. For example, today my phone's ringing off the hook from 75-year-old widows and widowers whom you think would be the most conservative people in the world, screaming at me to sell bonds, which are safe, and buy stocks because they're cheap. And I was like, man, I'm proud of these guys.
I've taught you something.
Yeah.
If you think about it, though, honestly, take a 75-year-old right now. They may have 15 more years in the market.
Bingo.
I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing. It sounds old, but really, for a lot of these people, it's not that old.
It's not that
not
old.
the average.
Yeah.
And so I'll close with this, that the average individual investor has achieved a 5% return over a rolling 5-year period. These aren't my stats, it's the federal government's.
Yeah.
While the market has returned 10.1%. And the reason is because of emotions and lack of education. Because education is what allows you to temper those emotions to make correct decisions. Anyway, so I feel like what I'm doing right now, I'm getting the same high that I did in the Army with my guys, getting them prepared for the fight. And so there's a lot of parallels to it.
That's awesome.
Except I don't have a dickhead general with an ego who wants to play with his Tonka truck tanks when we're going to Afghanistan.
Honestly, I see a lot of similarities between the two jobs, though.
Yeah.
Which is why I think you were probably incredibly good at both of them. You were literally doing the same kind of protection for people right now that you were doing in your previous job. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of cool.
So what was the when you got out of the service?
Yeah.
Were you already thinking you were heading in this direction?
I launched so while I was in the service, I successfully developed, manufactured, branded, and then sold a couple different consumer discretionary items, right? Supplements specifically.
Right.
And what I learned with internet marketing, I launched a marketing agency when I left the Army. And I'm embarrassed to say that I broke my own rules. And I didn't identify a market before I provided the supply. So the market found me.
Please say that one more time. I've actually had this conversation, maybe not in quite as crisp business terms, but I've had this conversation with so many people
Okay.
a lot of people out there in podcast land who know me know I have been doing something in the music business half my life. So I've had the conversation with so many guys that who's going to buy your records?
Exactly.
And they always look at me like I grew another head, or
It's because they're artists, not businessmen.
Exactly. I'm saying something blasphemous, and I'm like, no.
Or business people.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
like, no, seriously, who's going to buy them? I said, well, I'm not selling records to 12-year-olds. I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying, have you done any research to find out who purchases new music?
Because
you're a new artist.
Right.
So who buys new music?
Nobody.
Guaranteed.
Here's an easy way to explain it to them. Nobody gets paid until something gets sold.
Exactly. I said, so I've kind of come to the place where I'm tired of fighting that fight with some of the other artists that I know.
That's when you just drop them.
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, look. Look, at the end of the day, you may not want to sell records to teenagers, but guaranteed the largest market of purchasers for new music, not music in general, new music, is 16 to 24.
Suburban teenage white
Period.
girls.
Yeah, and if you break it down further.
So were you asking him to repeat?
What?
I was just saying. Yeah, no, I was just saying, repeating the fact that people hadn't that he had not identified the market in his first business.
Right.
I said that's so key to me. If you know who buys what you're selling,
Right.
you probably might be able to sell it because you know how to market it and who to market it to.
Yep.
You know, I think a lot of artists in particular assume that they are the market because they like a thing.
Yep.
You know, and I'm like, so I can guarantee you there aren't any 40-year-old black dudes buying new rap albums.
Absolutely
I
not.
guarantee you.
No.
I don't care who's putting them out.
No.
I says, they may love the Wu-Tang Clan or whoever, and if Wu-Tang puts a new album out, guess what they're going to do?
Buy it.
They're going to look for it on Spotify and Pandora.
All right.
Because they're free.
Yeah.
16 to 24-year-olds buy records, and 70% of those are, like you said, you know, younger white girls.
Right.
That's who buys records.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying suddenly you have to, you know, make a record that's so super laser focused on a young white girl audience.
Katy Perry.
I don't think it's
Wrong market
necessarily
altogether.
white girls. I think it's teenage girls in general.
But
In fact, the only two genres of music that actually sell music anymore is rap and hip hop and country.
yeah,
That's it.
So-
everything else is just
nothing to sell.
Which
Everything
Or the
else.
double
is
helix of
true.
pop culture.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, like they'll still go out and buy it.
yeah.
It's
Rap and
just-
country, purchase.
or like
Everybody else streams.
to a very, very, very minor degree, you'll have a bunch of hipster indie kids buy records, like actual physical LPs.
yes.
But that's it. And that's a
Vinyl.
very, very, very minor part of the
Yeah.
market. But that's it.
Yeah, so like if you know that, maybe you can sell something.
Yep.
Because I'm not telling you to make different records. I'm telling you focus your marketing approach toward the people purchasing records.
I always think there's an artistic quandary here, and I tell this to everybody because I played in a band for years and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, you can do it for one of two reasons. You can do it because you like to write music, in which case, don't try to sell it. Just keep writing music and love it and do all that. But the second you make that decision,
You go
you start
commercial.
selling something.
Yeah.
Now you're in a business.
Yeah,
You know, and so you better bring a business mentality to it,
Yeah.
or you're not going to last.
Exactly.
Well,
Absolutely
exactly,
not.
because you're going to end up having to do things to sell that you may not like personally.
Have you ever read a record contract? It's stunning.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
it's
you-
not even
you
that.
got
It's
nothing.
Yeah, they
you know,
own
a lot
your
of
soul
you.
and your next born child.
They own
Well-
your masters, they own everything.
But even further than that, sometimes you end up having to make records that you don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
because-
for sure.
That's what sells.
I had a
Yeah.
very good friend who played in a band in college. They got signed on to Capitol Records, and so they were making demo after demo after demo, and Capitol Records was like, you know, we haven't found the hit yet. Like, you guys got to get back in the studio. We need the hit song that's going to anchor this album.
Right.
So they got in there and wrote a song about how shitty record companies were, and Capitol dropped them the next fucking day. So you were out. You were off our label.
Yeah.
If you can't play by the rules, you're done.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
they got
because
to
there
do
is
it.
a rule to every industry. I don't care what the industry is.
Yep.
There's a rule to every industry. If you don't learn how to play by the rules of the business you're doing,
Well, it's not like those dudes were footing the bill. Capitol Records was
Yeah,
footing the bill. 13%
exactly.
of records make money. They pay for the other 87%
that
lose
do
money.
not.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But, Mario, what happened just by luck? So I had this agency with no clients and all this internet marketing know-how. And I don't know what happened, but I was just reading Forbes one day and noticed that the advisory business, the average age of an advisor was 62, and I was like, hell, they're all going to retire within 3 years. And so then I figured out, I was like, you know what, maybe I should do qualified lead generation for the young guys who can't inherit a book from daddy, right? And so so make a long story short, how I got into where I'm at right now is one of my major clients stiffed my firm on and they're a well-known firm, and they stiffed my firm on a humongous performance bonus based on the work we had done for them. And so rather than firing them right then and there, I stayed friendly and reverse engineered their business and identified how they were acquiring customers, what their value proposition was, and who they were ignoring. And then that's when I made the jump. Fuckers.
That's awesome. That's the way to do it.
Hey, man. But I say business is war, and you are
Yeah.
already trained trained in one of those. So there you go.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's
That's
awesome.
really cool. That's a great story.
Yeah, actually quite cool. Now, Sheena?
My
Worst?
worst job? Oh, gosh. I think I would have to say I used to work at a OBGYN.
Ugh.
And I was, in the front, so I think the worst thing about that job, other than the office manager who made everybody's lives hell, was always having, you work, I'm sure, I don't know if all of you guys know what an OBGYN is, but
Yes.
Yeah.
baby doctor. Baby doctor. It was just a constant, and they were very popular, so it was just constantly having to reschedule people and reschedule people and reschedule people, and, a lot of specialties, they get referrals from other doctors, and, well, this is a friend, so I have to get this patient in, so we have to reschedule this patient. And, there's nothing worse than dealing with hormonal women rescheduling an appointment for the 5th time, and, what can you say to them? It's shitty.
Wow.
And we saw the good and the bad of it. We saw, babies be born healthy. We saw women that lost babies. It was just the gamut. And I think being a woman and being a mother, you kind of feel all of that, and it just... But ultimately, it was the office manager that I really just wanted to punch in the face. And at that point, I knew that I probably shouldn't be working there. So I
Yes.
got up and left.
I think wanting to do
That's not
physical
easy.
harm to your boss is probably...
And, when the doctors found out, they were sad and asked if there was anything they could do. And I'm like, no, because you can't get rid of your office manager. So,
Yeah.
So there you have it.
it just didn't work out.
Well, way to go out on your own terms, though, honestly.
Yeah,
That's not an easy thing to do.
no. Well, and I was much younger, so I didn't have a lot of control over my emotions back then. So, yeah, it was amazing that I didn't punch her in the face, to be honest.
Do you feel like you learned anything?
I did, actually, and funny enough, the job I have now is the next job I had.
Ah.
But I went in as a temp, so...
See, office skills when you're a temp get you into career opportunities. Non-office skills as a temp get you rubbing off
Toilets.
I had kind of office skills before that job, before working at the doctor's office, but it really gave me an understanding of how to deal with people in stressful situations and being calm. Because, that's one thing they tell you, you have to be calm all the time. You're dealing with hormonal women. I'm sure you guys all understand that.
Calm.
But,
Calm is your friend. Calm is your friend.
yeah, but
Yes.
definitely. And
Indeed.
a lot of people, being a doctor, that can be daunting for people to talk to them sometimes. And I never had that. And I think that, being able to talk to them as people and seeing them as people, it gave me the ability to,
Oh, and regular.
like I
life.
have a conversation with our CEO, and a lot of people are like, I'm not even going to look at him. I'm going to go the other way. And I'm like, why? He's a human being.
Yeah.
They do the same things we do. They just have more money. So it,
A lot more sometimes.
Yeah.
well, our CEO does, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, I think just age has given me